talking a lot about creativity, what it is, and we haven't really come to a conclusion, but luckily for us, science has a conclusion. So scientifically speaking, creativity is thought to be the ability to produce work that is novel and appropriate. That means that it is new or different and useful. So this is an important definition because it forms the basis of how we measure creativity right now. And I thought it'd be interesting to look into this. I know I've been going on for ages about, we are all creative. We are all creative, but we've also talked about how we're not all as creative, or one person may seem to be more creative than someone else. And that doesn't mean that they're stuck in that level. This kind of testing, even the father of this kind of creativity testing, Guilford, said that this kind of testing is not intended to be a definition of someone's creativity forever, but rather it's something that's in flux. It's a kind of reflection of their creativity at the time they do the test, and not something that says, this person is 67% creative. So let's have a look at these tests. Basically, in science, there are 4 different ways which creativity is dealt with in testing, and that is that it is using a personal approach, a process approach, a product approach, or a press approach, press in this case being environment. Let's have a look at each of those. So on a personal approach, the way this is set up is that essentially we've identified, we being science or whoever, humans, we've identified people who have been very creative. And from there we can identify different personality traits which are prevalent in people who are very creative. So then we can test for those personality traits. And the famous test for this, or the most used one, is What Kind of Person Are You test, which was done by Torrance, who is one of the leaders of all this creativity testing, and his team. And essentially that is a test of, I think, 60 questions where you're choosing between one statement about you and another statement about you, which could be something similar to, I'm a good guesser and I take on board other people's points of view. So not necessarily directly related, you have to pick which one of those is most appropriate for you, and it's a self-assessment test. You can also do it through a 360, and some of these tests go into a little bit more detail on this. The second type of creativity testing is all about the process, and what we're really testing for here is divergent thinking. Divergent thinking being this ability to open up and have as many ideas as possible. How do we do this? Well, the original version of this was done in the 1920s. This was developed by Guilford, and basically what he did was give people a task to do in 2 minutes, which was come up with as many uses as possible for a plastic cup. Maybe he didn't do plastic cups in the 20s. I don't know, we use that now anyway. Come up for as many uses as possible for this thing. If you've been to any creativity conferences or seminars, you've probably done this exercise. So everybody in a group does that exercise. Then they are rated for things such as fluency, which is just the number of ideas they're able to have in that time frame, originality, so how many other people have similar ideas, and if there are less than around 5% of the group that have that, then it's going to be counted as an original idea. And then also flexibility. So how many different groups of ideas are you having on this list of uses that you have for this thing? So that would be the original version, let's say, of this kind of process testing for divergent thinking. This has obviously been developed a lot over the years. So again, Torrance and his team were a really big influence here and still continue to be. So essentially what they've done is develop this into different ways of expressing yourself. So yes, you can do it verbally. So when you're being told to or asked to come up with as many uses as possible. Yes, you can also do it written. So it could be writing those ideas down, and it could also be drawing. So one of the main tests that he uses is you've got a square with a few lines in it, and you have to sort of connect the lines and make different pictures out of those. And they are then again rated for those 3 things, plus another idea, which is the idea of detail or elaboration. Of course, it's a little bit different if you have a really carefully elaborated idea and then you've got 3 of those perfectly elaborated ideas and someone else has got hundreds of an idea that is very kind of sketchy. So that tries to take that into consideration in this kind of testing. The next type of testing is all about the product, and essentially what happens here is that the people being tested are asked to either finish a story or come up with a solution to a complex problem. And they are observed as they are presenting that solution. So essentially the experts come in and rate the solution for different things. So Quinn was one of the scientists that worked most on this, and he identified 3 different areas where people were observed around. So this would be novelty, again, the newness of the idea. Also the style of the idea. So again, a little bit like detail, but in this case, it's going into a little bit more information on whether the solution reflects directly what the problem was, or whether it's something more complex, whether there are several different ideas included in the final solution, things like that. So it's a little bit more in depth. The last one, of course, is resolution. Like, does this actually resolve the problem that was put forward? Is the story resolved? How does this fit together? Does it actually work? And that's obviously an important thing here. So this is external observers brought in. All of these different testing methods have some issues. And one of the issues with this one is, are the experts really experts on this? And do they really know about the specific type of creativity that might be needed for the area being assessed? Finally, we've got environment, and I think we can all attest to the fact that environment does make a difference on creativity, but we need to be able to assess that scientifically. And there are several different tests on this. The most used one is the Keys test, and essentially this is used a lot in the workplace. This is used to find out whether your office or the company that you work for is open to creativity, whether they're encouraging creativity or not. So this has 5 different things that it assesses. First of all is encouragement of creativity. Secondly, you have resources. You have whether there is an autonomy or independence instilled. You have the idea of pressure, how much pressure is being put on, and then whether there is anything that is stopping creativity, that is hindering it. So essentially, this is just a questionnaire that is sent out to the different employees. You fill it out, and then the researchers put all of that information together, and you get different ratings on those 5 areas, and you get an overall rating of how your company encourages or not creativity. So these are the 4 ways that we have of assessing creativity. Each one has its problems, and all of the scientific research is really, really open to saying, yes, we know that these are problematic, but we've got to measure it somehow. How can we measure it? And keeping going on changing this, trying to get closer and closer to how we can measure creativity, or at least how we can measure this idea of creativity being creating something new and creating something that is fit for purpose, new and useful, basically. I'd just like to say that I got a lot of this information from a PDF which is available online, put together by Bonnie Crammond at the University of Georgia, which essentially lists all of these different tests and gives you more information on that. So if you're interested, just look that up and you'll get loads more information. I did delve into a lot of academic articles on this as well, but I found that this was the easiest way to be able to give an overview on it. And obviously this is intended as a sort of introduction to how we measure creativity, not a definitive guide. Anyway, see you next time. Bye.